Good morning or afternoon or evening, depending on when you are watching this video. This is Coach Daryl Johnson. Thanks for joining me on our Protect and Lead Men's Mentorship Podcast number 1. So this is our first one. So the format is not set in stone. We will see how it plays out. Let's get started. Hey, thanks for joining me. Coach Daryl Johnson here. We're going to cover 3 topics today, maybe more depending on how things go. And we're going to hopefully give you some insight and education on how to navigate today's landscape as a man. And if you are new here, because obviously everybody's new here, it's the first one, is one of the challenges that we face as guys is the mixed messaging we have in our culture and society. I'm talking Western society. Obviously, if you live in some place in the world where it's not been taken over by the Western culture, then you probably have a different set of circumstances. Either way, I'm going to work on the assumption you're in the West, America, Canada, UK, Western Europe, even a lot of Latin America now is facing these challenges. So let's get started. So Protect and Lead basically goes into what in traditionally men, as those are the roles men have had in a family and in a group. It doesn't mean that women cannot protect somebody and women can't be leaders, but this is where I think our strength lies as guys. So we're going to work on this. We're going to talk about something. By the way, if you don't know my background, I've been a self-defense instructor and physical fitness trainer for about 30 years plus now. So this is where my specialty lies. So let's get into it. I want you to understand something about today's world and what your role as a protector is of your family and your basically your tribe of people who are less capable of taking care of themselves as you, children, smaller people, elderly, females, people who don't have the same ability to protect themselves as you, at least on paper. And that is, look at this picture. Everybody here is not looking at anything other than their phone. They're walking down the street. They don't have an idea what's going on other than what might be literally jumping right out in front of them. And I want to go over this first for self-defense because we get into how to defend a gun or a knife or a punch or a headlock or a choke and those things are really important. But honestly, guys, just think logically for a minute. If you can avoid a situation that requires you to go hands-on, you're going to be way better off. Because even if you have self-defense skill or you're a badass or whatever your deal is, there's always there's a chance of not only getting injured yourself, but there's a chance of unnecessarily having to cause damage. And by unnecessarily, I mean you have to deal with the consequences of hurting somebody. Even if you are legally justified, maybe criminally you're fine, but there's always a civil element. Maybe the guy goes, you know what, I'm going to sue him for my medical bills or lost wages or whatever the case is. I'm a huge proponent of paying attention to what is going on around you so you can avoid bad situations. And this is a metaphor for life in general, but in this context, I'm specifically talking about your immediate surroundings. So your self-protection, your protection of your loved ones is paramount. I'll tell you a little thing I do. It's probably silly. But when I'm in a store, well, of course, now that we're on the tail end of the pandemic, it's a little bit easier. There was a couple of years there where this wasn't applicable. But let's say I go in to get a drink, I get an iced tea or something like that. I go into a fast food restaurant, I grab the drink cup from the counter, and I go over to the station. And there's somebody in front of me, and they're getting ice or drinks or whatever. And I can literally stand up and walk up to them and get right behind them, and they have zero idea I'm even there. Of course, now I'm paying attention, so when they turn around, I make sure they don't bump into me. But I oftentimes wonder, I'll do this thing where I kind of just stand there and just see how long it takes for they realize I'm there. And I can't tell you guys how many times I've stood behind somebody watching them not pay attention until they literally turned around, and of course I move out of the way, and they would have run into me. But it's insane to me. So I really want to focus on the element as you move around your life, your car, your work, you're traveling from place to place. Get in the habit of scanning your surroundings. When you walk into a building, pay attention to who's in there, where any exits might be, where any. I'm not talking about being paranoid. That's not my point. My point is just pay attention. I always sit in a restaurant where I don't have my back to the main entrance. I try not to have my back to any door, but whatever. And it's not that I'm going to save the world, or I'm going to spring into action and be a hero. It's just I don't want to be caught by surprise if something needs to be addressed. So, and this is it used to be a normal thing. Usually the guy, if you're on a date or with your family or with your elders, your grandparents, it used to be normal. The guy would kind of like serve it before you go into a restaurant. Look around, open the door for them. And as I open the door, I'm looking around, seeing like maybe where I want to sit, or also like, does anybody here look sketchy? I don't want to be next to an exit. I don't want to be next to an exit where I can't access it, like my back is to it. So just get in the habit of paying attention to your surroundings, and it really is a habit. Another good time is so let's say you're walking to your car. Before you just open the door, look around. So one of my I guess my job is as a self-defense instructor. I watch a lot of surveillance video on attacks. I've been doing this a long time. When I first started doing Krav Maga back in the early 2000s, we would. This is before YouTube was really big, and actually, I don't think YouTube was even around. But it wasn't. The internet was still relatively new. Is we spent a lot of time looking at actual surveillance cameras of people being attacked, and their response, and the attacker's response to their response. And a lot of these were fatal attacks. Knife attacks, shootings, beatings. So it was useful for us to kind of observe the people in their natural environment. And man, if they would have paid attention, so many people would have been better off. And one of the things I want to get back to, I kind of digressed a bit, is like when you're getting in your car. I've seen so many times where people they're on their now they're on their phone, but they walk to the car, they're not paying attention, put the key in. Someone comes behind the car, boom, shoves them in there, beats them up, or drags them out, or hits them in the head, or puts a gun in their back, and just pay attention. So, we can go on for days on specific tasks or specific scenarios. Let's just leave it at just pay attention to what's going on around you. Make it a habit. Yes, your phone's important, and yes, just like everybody else, I live with my phone and I, work from it. But look around, pay attention, know your surroundings, especially if you are with people who are more vulnerable than you. All right, let's move on to our next topic. Okay, let's talk. This is I wouldn't say it's controversial, but it's going to probably ruffle a few feathers, and people are going to be whining about it. And there's no whining here, guys. That's a rule. You can bring up concerns, but make sure you're either prepared to accept solutions or you have come with possible solutions. Don't just bitch about something and not have any kind of an alternative. Moving on. All right. For you to maximize your ability to protect and lead, or just basically be healthy, you need to lift heavy shit. You need to get, now, this is important. It doesn't have to be in the gym. It doesn't have to be lifting. You have to put your body into a place where you're actually making some exertion that requires you to make an adaptive change. So you are putting a stress upon your physical being that requires your body to adjust for it and make it stronger. And this isn't just for aesthetics, not for getting buff or bulked up or getting yoked or whatever term you want to use. You're supposed to be strong. We're built to be strong. Now, are we going to be as strong as a gorilla or a lion? Well, no, but we have a different way of handling the world. But you, as the man, are supposed to be a strong person, strong enough to, obviously open jars, take trash out, move furniture, stuff like that. Ordinary things. And it saddens me when I look at the state of young men today, and by young, I mean under the age of 30, but really it applies to guys in general, and how many of these guys are just incapable of doing anything that requires exertion. They're again, I don't want to make this sound like you need to be an athletic freak. Okay, that's not a fair thing to say. A lot of people don't have the time, the interest, or maybe even the ability. But by God, get strong. Be a strong human being. Be useful. Men are judged by their ability to provide value. Usefulness. Do you make money? Can you protect people? Can you, lead? Can you teach somebody something? Otherwise you're just dead weight, man. You're just dead weight. And females have they have a different role in society, so they're judged a little bit differently. We're going to get into that a little bit more here in a bit. So just get in the habit of exerting yourself. I say lift heavy shit. That's lifting weights, or resistance training is the most efficient way to build lean muscle mass. It's not the only way. Just be active. Rock climbing, just a sport. Maybe you play football, rugby, soccer, running. Those don't do as much. I mean, they're great for your agility and your conditioning, but they really don't do much to build a lot of strength. All right. Does that make sense? We're good? Okay, cool. Let's move on. So our next topic, and this is what, honestly, and I know that in this channel, many people are gonna come here because they want girls. They're like, oh well, how do I get more female attention? How do I attract more women? Because obviously that's as a living organism, one of our main objectives of life is to reproduce our genes into the world. So as guys, since we don't carry the children, we are going to try to have as much contact with the females as possible and have our genetic material move on. So there's some realities that you have to be faced with that are really uncomfortable. And I want to be clear on this, is when we get into the intersectional, male-female dynamic of human nature, evolutionary psychology, if you will, it's very easy for people to be discouraged and feel like, oh, I can't do it. It's too hard. It's the same thing with people who if you want a job, oh, I can't get a job. I don't have a degree. You got to work for it, man. You're selected on your ability to bring value. Okay. If you want to work in a certain field, you have to provide the value that field works. If you want to have mating options, to put it in a biological term, you have to provide the kind of value that your potential mate would be looking for. And let's get to this next chart. So I want you to look at this chart. Okay, this is the 80-20 principle, and I'm using these numbers. These are very rough estimates. It's a little bit different depending on what source you look at. So the challenge we have today with our internet world, and I'll come back to this chart in a moment, is so our mission as guys is to reproduce with as many females as possible. That's our biological mission. Obviously, as humans, we have a different, we can modulate that. Now, from the female side of things, they are trying to reproduce with the most beneficial mate as possible, because they have to carry the child, and not in modern day as much, but before, when they were carrying a child, had a young child with them, they were not able to be as productive, so they had to be protected. Because if you imagine 200 years ago, you have a toddler, a 1-year-old child, you're not going to be able to go to a factory or work on a farm like you would like. It's just the reality of the world was that women needed to have somebody in their life that could protect them. Maybe not provide every detail, every tiny thing, but overall they weren't in a position to really be a breadwinner when they're heavily pregnant, or they have a small child, or multiple small children. So human nature dictates that females are going to be way more selective about the mate they choose, because the burden of taking care of these small children rests on them, because they have the children and they're generally tasked with nurturing them. And obviously before formula was something, if you can go buy in a store, women had to provide the breast milk for the children, something men can't do, despite what today's media might have you believe. All right, let me go back to this chart. So 80-20. So what's happened, since women are now able to see the world at a glance on their phone, just like men are, I want to say the illusion of selection is much greater, because if you're a female and you have an Instagram or you have a Facebook, you look into your messages, and there's just a ton of people trying to hit you up, get your attention. And so as a female, like, wow, look at all these choices I have. Now, are these guys all looking to, have a lifelong commitment with the person? Well, no, of course not. Like I mentioned before, you know, our biological mission is to have as much female contact as possible. So the two are at odds. You know, women are looking for a very small number of, or one, you know, appealing mate. Men are looking for a large number possible of potential mates. So what's happened with social media, and I would say social media in specific, but internet at large, is the the dating pool has grown exponentially. Remember, a couple of years ago, you were limited geographically. I mean, it was if if it was 200 years ago, it would have been 1820. I don't even know if trains were a common thing back then. But it was effort to go somewhere, and you couldn't just no. Oh, I know in this city, 2 states over, there's a guy who really wants to get with me. So it was very, very geographically limited. Now the world is your oyster. You can fly somewhere. A wealthy man can pay for a female to fly into his city, spend the weekend, et cetera, et cetera. So there's an illusion of choice, and combined with the movement that women have been told that they're beautiful at every size and you should never settle, and you deserve only the best. Now, there's nothing wrong with having standards, but it's there's reality, and then there's like the augmented reality of our world today. So the reason I'm bringing all this up is a preface to this chart I showed you, the 80-20. In today's world, virtually all of the women that are single, I'm assuming, or looking, because obviously they aren't all single, are looking for the top 20% of guys. The guys that make money, the guys that look good, the guys that have status, the guys that have, they're respected by their peers. So you have the huge majority of available females, like 80%, probably 100%, but let's just say 80%. They are all trying to get the attention of the top percentage of men, 20%. I mean, obviously they really want the top 5, top 1%, but the reality is, so the top 20% of guys are getting the attention from 80% of the females. So if you are in the top 20%, whether it looks or status or money or you have respect or clout, then it's going to be your selection grows very, very dramatically, because they're actually clamoring for attention, and they're looking to get your time. The downside is, if you're on the 80% of guys who maybe aren't really attractive or aren't wealthy, or you don't have any social status, and maybe you're a solid guy, so that can be a challenge. Now, give me a second. I want to show you something else here. Let's see if I can do this real quick. All right. I don't know if you can see this. So I want you to understand that you have there's 2 different values we're talking about here. That's what I call the mating rating, or how attractive you are to the opposite sex. And then you have your society value, like how important you are to the human race. And there's a correlation between them, but it does not necessarily equate. Let me give you an example. Let's say you are a brilliant engineer and you are working on a device that is going to cut carbon emissions by 30% across the board. Now, whether you believe in climate change or not, that's a pretty amazing thing. As a human being in society, that makes your societal value very high. You are a desirable person to have in your society, and you bring a lot to the table as far as a human being. Let's say you're this amazing engineer, you're gifted, you're this amazing idea, and then, but let's say you're 5'6", So you're a little below average height. Well, below average height. And let's say you don't exercise, you don't eat right, so you're really overweight. And let's say you are cripplingly introverted. Like just can't talk to people without severe anxiety. So you're not attractive. Oh, and your invention, you do this for a nonprofit organization, and you make $25,000 a year, and you live with your mom. So your value to society is very high. Your mating rating, your value as a potential mate, is very, very low, because you're not attractive to females. They obviously want, just like us, they want someone who's in shape and looks good and has features that are appealing. Because you're not tall. Women like taller men because they like to feel protected. So that's why height is a big deal. You're obviously out of shape. You don't have a lot of ambition by their standards, because you're living with your mom, so you don't have any money. So your mating rating is really, really low, even though you are a brilliant engineer and you're working for a nonprofit and you live with your mom. Does that make sense? So people see this chart and they hear these numbers and they get all bummed out and like, oh, it's worthless, I can't do it. I go, here's my take on this. So the reality is today, with the state of American men, again, we're using America, obviously that's where I'm from. So many of them are unambitious, unattractive, because they're fat and they don't take care of themselves, and they have some kind of scraggly beard that is in patches, and their hair is all unkempt, and they wear a stained T-shirt, and they're in their mom's basement or their grandma's house, and they're playing video games all day. They have no ambition, and they're whining about why they can't find jobs because the evil corporate gods are keeping them under. That shit is just disgusting to me. I'm going to be real honest with you. So I'm not here to make anybody feel bad, but I'm here to be very honest. And I don't have all the answers, folks. I am not God's gift to mankind or womankind, for that matter. However, I have very strong opinions, and I have a lot of science that I follow that works with this. So the bad news is the vast majority of American men are really unappealing to women for two reasons. First, the skewed viewpoint of women. They think they have all this selection, and compounded by the lackluster pool of dating that men provide, because a lot of them are unambitious, they're out of shape, they aren't going anywhere in life. And we'll get into that in another video, why that happens. I'm not saying it's hopeless. Here's the good news. The good news is the bar is so low to be an above average guy that it wouldn't take very much effort for one of these overweight, stained T-shirt, basement dwelling dudes to level up enough to all of a sudden become the kind of guy that women are attracted to. Because the reality is obviously if you have 80% of the women going for 20% of the guys that are available, there's a lot of women who are not getting selected. And that's the lie that feminism has told women. That's another video. So they will need to find somebody, because they're not getting the top guy they want. So if you're just above average guy, are you going to get that hot smoking Instagram model? Well, probably not, but that's okay, because they have their own set of problems. We'll get into that in the video as well. So I'm imploring you, folks, my brothers out there in America, it doesn't take very much to be above average for the date. So you're going to take your mating rating and you're going to bump it up. Now, I'm not saying you should lower your societal value. If you're doing amazing things for society and you're productive, keep it up. We need that. But you'll also find that if you are productive and you're going somewhere and you have ambition and you have a passion in life, you have a mission, you have a purpose, then you're going to not only increase your societal value, but you're going to increase your mating rating and you'll be more attracted to females. Make sense? All right, again, there's a whole world in this. And now I want you to understand this very clearly. I'm going to say this probably in every video I ever shoot. I'm not here to give you stats and make you all depressed and have you feel sorry for yourself, because that's not manly. It's disgusting. Whining and self-pity are incredibly unappealing traits for anybody, not just for finding a mate, but for just other men. As guys, we want to be respected by our peers. So even if, let's say, women don't find you appealing, maybe you're just ugly, and you don't, and you're super introverted. That's fine. You can still find respect in your peers. And I will tell you this. This is important. So one of the signs of attraction that women look for is not just like, are you good looking? Do you make money? It's like, how well are you respected by other men? If you're a good looking dude, but no other man likes you, and you have no status in the man's world, that's going to hurt your overall value as a mate, your mating rating. So it's important that not only do you make enough money to take care of your business and provide, but you can, you're in good enough shape where you can protect somebody. You have some skills as a leader, so you can, lead a family, lead a significant other. But you got to be a good enough person where your fellow men also thinks that you're somebody of value, and that's really, really, really important. That's really important, and I don't want to dismiss that. So the good news is it's not that hard to level up, folks. The bar is really low in our country. It's pathetically low. It's embarrassingly low. So I don't want to harp on that too much. Let's review. All right, number one way to be a better protector is to pay the freak attention of what's going on around you. When you walk into a building, you walk into a room, walk into a parking lot, look around, get the lay of the land, identify any threats, identify any potential weapons. Just pay attention, folks. Use your brain. And lift some heavy shit. Or I should say, just exert your body. You don't have to lift, but the lifting is the most economical way to get there as far as time. Okay, so just make sure we do that. And be aware of this principle that has been magnified by social media and feminism and Western society. It creates an obstacle, but it is not something you can't overcome. And be aware that your societal value does not equal your mating rating. They are two different things, so you got to make sure you work on them both independently. So I hope that makes sense, guys. If it doesn't make sense, send me a question. My mission here is to build, literally, like I said, build better men. And I don't mean, better is not arbitrary. There are certain attributes that are universally accepted as being good. Are you strong? Do you have leadership skills? Can you protect the vulnerable? Are you able to take care of people? Physically, emotionally, financially. Those are things that matter. So I'm going to sign off with that. This is Coach Daryl Johnson, Protect and Lead Men's Mentorship. Thank you for joining me. Podcast number 1. I will talk to you soon.